Welcome everyone. Again, my name is Tabby Bellhorn. I'm the director for Ohio Hands and Voices. Janelle is the director for Michigan Hands and Voices and ASTRA coordinator, and she's hiding somewhere among our participants list here. We're going to go ahead and get started today with our session about becoming a Radvocate. So if you've been around the Hands and Voices world for a while, you may have heard this term, Radvocate. It can sound a little bit extreme, but I want to promise it's not extreme, and I'm going to explain why. So first, as we get started, I'm going to back it up just a bit, and not that you need an English lesson from a non-linguistics person. I'm not a linguist, but we're going to talk a little bit about the language here. So radical, by definition, can either be a noun or an adjective, but the way that we use it is really as an adjective, and it's a way to describe a person. When we look at this definition here, my favorite are definitions A and B. So radical means very different from the usual or traditional, or B, so favoring extreme changes in existing views, habits, conditions, or institutions. It's change, like we're looking for change, right? So as advocates, I mean, I feel we have to favor change in our existing views and habits. There tends to be a common mentality of, well, that's how we do it, or that's the way we've always done it. And that's not radical thinking. Side note, I'm so sorry for interrupting. I think I forgot to tell everybody that we do have captions available today. If you would like to turn those captions on, you can drop down to the menu that says CC, turn those on, and if you're having any problems, just post in the chat and Janelle will help you with that. So moving on to the definition of advocate, that means this can either be a verb or a noun, but within our definition of Radvocate here, it's really a noun. But you know, parents, this is us. This is you. Like it or not, you are an advocate for your child, whether that's at school, whether that's in a medical setting. Sometimes it can be as simple as sitting at a restaurant and asking to return a meal that your child ordered and hated. That was one of the jobs as a parent I hated the most. I hated returning meals. I always felt so uncomfortable. But you know, this definition of advocate means one who pleads the cause of another, one who defends or maintains a cause or proposal, and one who supports or promotes the interests of a cause or a group. So this, again, this is us, right? This is what we're doing as parents. Now, we're going to take those two words and put those together and come up with Radvocate. So, you know, in Hollywood, there's these cute couple names like Bennifer or Brangelina. So this is the equivalent of that, Radvocate. So are you convinced yet that you want to become a Radvocate for your child? If you're not, I'm going to keep trying and let you know what the benefits of being a Radvocate are. So here's why you want to be a Radvocate. Number one, you know, your child will get the services and supports that they need. Sometimes as an advocate, we have to go to the status quo and we have to challenge that mentality of that's the way it's always been done. You get to help others see the uniqueness and individuality of your students and how that applies to other deaf and hard of hearing students as well. You get to help educate others, help them see why things need changed or how to change systems or processes. So, you know, you're helping the system. You will feel so empowered as a Radvocate. You're, you know, being empowered when you're involved in your child's education. And so sometimes these might seem or feel like radical reasons, but I believe that all of these points are important. But maybe that's why I've bought into the radical or the Radvocate mentality. So let me tell you how to become a Radvocate. There are 4 important parts. We're going to talk about what we in the Hands and Voices world refer to as the 4 R's. Those are reason, rationale, resolution, and remedy. So before I move into the 4 R's, I want to remind you, this is my friendly public service announcement for you. If you have burned bridges in the past, I wholeheartedly believe that you can rebuild those bridges and create that beautiful rebuilt bridge, just this progression that you see here. So you know what, if you have done this, it's okay, because we can still rebuild, and then everybody wins. You know, some of the best IEP teams that I have worked with over the years have gone through each of these stages. To rebuild, just remember, it takes time, patience, respect, and self-awareness, but you can do it, and your IEP team can do it by working together. It's also really important as you're looking to become a Radvocate, that you understand your personal advocacy style. So I'm going to just touch on these. And I want you to know that there is no right advocacy style. There is no better option. But what I do want you to know is I want you to be able to identify your strengths as an advocate and use them and build upon your strengths. I don't want you to get hung up on this mentality or position that this style is better, or I need to change the things that I do that I'm not very good at. I need to improve those. No, actually just continue to build upon your strengths. Use those to your advantage. You bring a different skill set and perspective into the team, and what may be your weakness may be somebody else's strength on the team. So you keep building your strengths and your skills. So we talk a lot at Hands and Voices about these different styles here. So, you know, you might be the cookie parent, who is the parent who's able to win the IEP team over with honey, or more importantly, usually cookies, maybe donuts. This parent usually appears to be non-threatening. On the opposite end of that spectrum, you might be the parent from hell. You know, appears very threatening, or often known as that parent. And I think at one time we've all had to be that parent, and that's okay. You might be the parent PhD. So this is the advocate who becomes the expert in whatever area they need to be. So if that's in deaf and hard of hearing, you become that expert. You may be the parent team manager. This is somebody who works very well collaboratively, involves everybody in the process and their perspectives. You might be the parent from law school. Sometimes that's very literally. We do have parents who are attorneys, but you also might be the parent who has gotten to know and become very familiar with the law, such as IDEA or other laws that help in education, and just simply understanding the judicial process as well. You might be the political parent. This is the parent who knows your audience. You know your IEP team members, and you know how to work that audience and how to get inside the system and create change, which often leads to the parent as a lobbyist. This is a parent who gets involved, you know, at a district level, maybe with your school board or with your PTA. Also at a state level, you know, even making new legislation or being part of advisory committees. And lastly, you might be the 007 parent. And that's me. That's the style that I identify with the most, as the strategist. You can play kind of that good cop, bad cop person. You combine tactics. I know when my husband and I would go to IEP meetings, we would split up those roles between good cop and bad cop. And I was generally the bad cop. I think he got the good end of that. But you know, each of these styles are effective. And I think let me back up. Each of these styles is different, and they each have their positive qualities that can become very effective. So, you know, as effective and successful advocates, I think we often use a little bit of these characteristics from each advocacy style, but we do lean towards one or maybe two as our main advocacy style. So use those and build upon those strengths. So moving into the 4 R's. So remember, these are reason, rationale, resolution, and remedy. So Using the 4Rs is a great way to identify what you want or what your child needs, how you're going to get it. So reason basically answers the question, what do you want? And rationale is, why do you want it? And then the resolution is being prepared for hurdles and objections and bringing solutions to the table. And then remedy can be that whole process when it works seamlessly together, or it can be the remedy when you have to use your rights as a parent. So using and knowing your procedural safeguards. So let's go ahead and take a look at each of these a little bit more in depth. So our first R is reason. What do you want? So if you're making a request of the district or your IEP team, you will have a reason for your request. In my house, we have a famous saying. So when my son was like 2 years old, he used to say, if I want it, I just want it. And so now in our house, we still call that Alex logic. And while that might work with something that's low stake, you know, like a candy bar for dinner, it's not going to work at an IEP meeting. So, you know, when you're asking for maybe placement or an additional service that costs thousands of dollars, Alex logic won't work. And emotional logic, or, you know, emotions won't work. So we want to be able to look at, you know, taking your gut feelings and transposing those into sound logic. So, you know, you can see here in this picture, left brain thinking versus right brain thinker. So if you're a right brain thinker, this might be a little bit harder for you. But if you're left brain, you might be like, this is very easy, I can do this. So, you know, within this R, your reason should be based on logic and not emotion. But if you are this right brain thinker or emotional thinker, that's okay. And that's great, actually. We just want to take this time to plan and prepare and put it into the logic, the left side of the brain. So, and you can do this by asking questions such as, why do I want this service or support or accommodation for my child? Usually, we've actually already thought about it a lot, but we just haven't been purposeful in our thinking or planning. So just write that down. You want to start to write that down. And sometimes you may need a week to do this. So you might just need to put up on your refrigerator a note and start jotting down your reasons as you think about them, kind of like you do your grocery list, right? You're going to put that down. If you're also asking for new or changed services, I'm going to recommend that you make those requests ahead of time in writing and be sent to the entire IEP team. So you're going to send your reason, and you will send, when we get to rationale, you're going to send that as well. So the team can review and be ready to discuss your requests at the IEP meeting. All right, our second R is rationale. So this answers the question, why do you want it? So you want to think, is your request reasonable or is it unreasonable? Can it be rationally supported by research-based facts, objective evaluations and assessments? Is verifiable success demonstrated in other students or school districts? So have you seen this work elsewhere? Maybe even in other states. You may be able to use special education law or even case law to justify why you want it. So if you yourself don't know the rationale behind the reason for your request and on behalf of your student, then you're really dealing with kind of a weak position, and you need to solidify that position. And you can do that by asking yourself these questions. Why do you think your idea will improve your child's performance? What evidence do you have that it can work? How have your child's assessments and evaluations been taken into consideration in regards to your request? How should the goals for this proposal be written so they are measurable? Side note, don't ever rely only on teacher observation, right? We want to do more than one measurement tool. Do you have a highly credible expert willing to write a letter that supports your position for rationale? Sometimes that might be, that might be an existing resource out there. You might bring somebody to the table. If you have an outside therapist or tutor, they may be that expert that you need support from? Can the opposing view be discredited? And are you sure you have unique answers for the reason and the rationale? So are these connected specifically to your child? Remember, IDEA is about the individual and unique needs of your child. So take that and make sure that, take that rationale and make sure that it's meshing with IDEA. The spirit and the letter of the law, either IDEA and ADA. We see a lot of accommodations under ADA these days as well. All right, so their third R here is resolution. So this is being prepared for hurdles and objections and bringing solutions to the table. So as I said, I identify as that 007 advocate, and this is one area that I think I do really well. So I can sit and I can think, well, what are the potential objections? And so, I might walk into an IEP meeting with some ideas, and we're looking here at options. So this picture here has 3 doors. So maybe as an IEP team, or we're saying, hey, the team says there's these 3 options, but really I could sit there and look and see 5 options. So maybe there's 5 doors instead of 3. You'll want to make sure that you go to the IEP meeting with options. This includes thinking ahead and being proactive. You'll want to have a plan prepared in the event that the school says no to your request. So if you have one solution, what other options would work? Sometimes that solution, maybe if you need a teacher of the deaf on your team, sometimes the teacher's not available based on location where your school district is. So what is your next best option? What else can occur? The solution that you're going to present often answers the questions that they have. So you're going to solve the problems that they think they have with your solutions. All the solutions that you want to bring to the table are going to be legally rationally based within federal and or state laws. And then you also, lastly, you want to make sure that you're documenting solutions, right? So we do have at Hands and Voices something called the PEI attachment. It's a Parent Education Initiative. I think it's kind of an unusual title actually, but basically what this document is, it's a table where you write down what's your request, what was the response of the school district, was it accepted, who's going to implement it, and when will that begin? So I actually love that form, because if I'm working for if I'm doing it as a parent, or if I'm working with a parent, we can put down all the requests ahead of time on that paper. Number one, to make sure that we are able to address all the thoughts and concerns of a parent. And then we just make easy notes on what the documentation or the response was to that request. So you can find this attachment at handsandvoices.org under the ASTRA services section. You can also find under there, which is great for preparing for hurdle talk or coming up with overcoming objections, is called the pop-up IEP. I highly recommend you take a look at that if you have not had a chance to do that before. Okay, our last R is remedy. So remedy can be looked at in 2 ways. One, this whole process and how it's working seamlessly together to get to the resolution and the results that are benefiting your child. And 2, if that doesn't go as planned, then the remedy is really knowing and understanding and using your procedural safeguards or your parents' rights. So ideally, we're never going to get there because we've worked together as a team with the other 3 R's. But if you do come to this point where you need to use this remedy, just remember the legal options that you have. Some of those can be complaints. You can file a complaint with your state Department of Education. You can request a mediation. You could file due process. Other options would include a facilitated IEP meeting or an administrative review. You also want to make sure, along this way and in this process, you want to work to prevent the need to use these legal remedies. As Pete Wright often says, prepare to litigate so you'll never have to. And this really is about documentation. So making sure that you're keeping good records and that you're reviewing those along the way. Another way to prevent the need for a legal remedy is by finding an ally on the inside. Who is your ally on the IEP team? Another option, you also want to make sure that you are becoming the expert that you need to be for your child. You're the expert in your child and his or her disability. Know the law. You want to understand the law and your rights and how that applies. And then last, just be willing to negotiate as well with your IEP team, right? So there's some give and take there. Know kind of what your bottom line is, what your non-negotiables are, and that where we do have some flexibility. So be flexible. Okay, so those are the 4 R's: reason, rationale, resolution, and remedy. So now we're going to practice those. So I've left this request very vague, actually on purpose. So in your mind, you can apply it to your own child, or if you're here as a professional, to other students that you work with. So I'm going to do example number 1 here. And then I have, depending on time, I think we'll have time, 2 more examples that we can quickly go through. So example 1. So my request, let's say my request is for CART services, real-time captioning services for my student. So let me take you through my 4 R's. I would say I would request to my IEP team, either in writing or ideally, remember, right? So we can plan ahead of time and have a discussion. So I would like to request that my daughter have CART services because during COVID times and in COVID classrooms, whether she is in remote or in-person learning, my child's having trouble accessing or getting full access and effective communication, which is hindering her learning. And my student also does not have note-taking accommodation. Remember, this is just pretend. She doesn't have note-taking accommodations, so CART services would provide her a copy of the notes as well, and would allow my child to have real-time access and participation in the class. CART services will allow my student to have visual supports along with the spoken English or ASL instruction that she's receiving from the teacher. It's going to help to fill any missing gaps of information that she can't access because of COVID safety precautions, such as masks or social distancing or barriers that might be up in a classroom. Another option instead of CART services could be adding note-taking services, or, maybe the teachers or staff or peers can use a different sort of mask to help increase access and communication. Another potential option might be to add a sound field system so she can have increased auditory access. And then also, maybe that option is just the teacher controlling communications within the classroom a little bit more tightly, so everyone has equal opportunity to participate. So you can see in that reasoning or in that segment, you should have been able to see my reason, my rationale, and my resolution. My remedy then would really come to the IEP team, right? Are we going to accept this? Are we not? And what options do we have beyond that? Great. So now I'm going to show you a couple more examples. And as I go through these other examples that are very specific to COVID learning times, please feel free to think about in your own mind how this may or may not apply to your student, or what you may or may not use for your reasons and rationales, how you would describe your 4 R's. Okay, so here's the second example. Your request could be dual monitors during distance learning. So here's the reason. I would like my daughter to have an additional device to use at home for online instructional periods. We've tried a split screen, but the view is too small, and right now she either has to choose between watching the interpreter or viewing the online assignment or the lesson or paper that's being displayed. Because the screen is too small and does not allow her access to view the interpreter, this leads to reduced access reduced communication access and reduced learning. It also reduces her attention span because she gets bored and she tends to fidget or find something else to do. This also leads to frustration with technology between the switching, going back and forth between screens. And I believe this option would be appropriate, or I believe this option would also be appropriate, another option rather. I believe this other option would be appropriate, would be a new device for my daughter with a larger screen, or can we find a way to make instruction in person and full time for her based on her learning needs? So that's just another example that you can use of the 4 R's. It was really simplified. If you were making this request in writing, I would suggest lengthening that request, explaining yourself some more, and putting some additional resources for your reasoning included in writing. Okay, a last example here, a request for a quality microphone during distance learning. Okay, so this particular student would be a student who's using his listening and spoken English skills during distance learning. So here's the reason. I would like for my son's online instructors to use a quality microphone, such as the kind of microphone that would be used to record podcasts. It's a quality microphone that will lead to better sound access and communication access. The Chromebook that my son is using, the sound quality is terrible, and there's too much background noise when a teacher is instructing. So a high quality microphone will filter the noise and clarify the speech, thus allowing clearer communication and access for my son. My resolution would be, I believe this option would also be appropriate, this other option. I believe this other option would be appropriate, would be a high quality device other than a Chromebook. So maybe a different sort of laptop, or maybe an iPad would have something that has better specs and better technology. Might also be open to testing a variety of microphones to see which has the better sound quality and provides the best access, which would be according to my son. I would like to include my son in that decision making about what works well and provides effective communication for him. And then of course, remember the remedy is the process itself, how it all works out, either coming to an agreement based on reason, rationale, and resolution, or if needed, exercising your rights as a parent, your procedural safeguards. So a complaint, a mediation, a due process. Those are very extreme, and ideally when the process is working well, the first 3 R's will not lead to that 4th R. And here are some additional national level resources that I wanted to share with you guys. We will make sure that you have a link to this PowerPoint. So the Hands and Voices website, Hands and Voices national website, has an article about becoming a Radvocate. I suggest you read that as well. Sometimes it's just a great review to this presentation. Also, don't forget Hands and Voices Astra page has all kinds of resources available for you. And Hands and Voices also has a COVID page that you can use to find additional resources during this pandemic. The National Association of the Deaf, if you have not seen this document yet, I highly recommend you take a look at it. It is a very specific position statement regarding education during coronavirus, talking about things such as access and closed captioning and making sure that deaf and hard of hearing students are still receiving a quality education. So I love that resource as well. Also, the National Center for the Deaf is a transition organization. So for kids moving into ages 14 or 16 and up into work and independent living, they have very specific COVID-19 resources as well. So please check that page out. And as always, Wright's Law is a great advocacy resource. Pete Wright, if you do not know him, is a special rights education attorney. He's got a lot of wonderful resources, and I just can't say enough about his resources. So they are general special education resources surrounding the law. So they are not deaf and hard of hearing specific. So much good content though. Okay. And last, of course, Michigan Hands and Voices and Ohio Hands and Voices are always available to help you. You can email us at the emails listed here. So that's mihandsandvoices@gmail.com for Michigan, or advocate@ohiohandsandvoices.org here in Ohio. And please visit our websites as well. You will find additional information and resources there, such as events that might be coming up. And don't forget that we do have a monthly advocacy Q&A session that is open. That is the first Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In this session, we collaborate with other Hands and Voices chapters in our region. So there are Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, and Minnesota. We all have ASTRO programs. We are all coming together to support families and answer questions. So you come to this Q&A session and you'll get to ask a panel of advocates their thoughts and their opinions and for their resources. We all have a variety of resources and we all have a different approach to advocacy. So I highly encourage you to drop in and say hi. Just say hi or ask us a question. We would love to see you. As always, if you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.